Summer Heights High is one of the funniest miniseries that Australian television has ever produced, and though it was released back in 2007, it still makes me laugh to this day.
How is it okay for you to bully Ben?
Because he's a ranger.
A what?
A ranger, sir. Because he's got red hair. Orangutan. Yeah. That's what we call him.
Australian television has produced so many shows that have stunk, and only a handful of ones have genuinely made me like them, with Summer Heights High being one of them. And to me, the show is still an icon of Australian comedy, despite some of its more riskier elements.
This is Toby, one of our specials from the Special Education Centre that we have here at the school. It's a separate part of the school down the bottom, but we allow them to play with the normal kids at recess and lunch and that sort of thing. So normally I'm not allowed to touch them like this, the students at the school, because of their child protection laws, but we usually turn a blind eye with these ones. You know, this sort of thing's fine, that sort of thing, not fine. Fine, not fine.
For a show with an incredibly simple premise as a mockumentary set in a high school, there are so many layers of social commentary within the education system that still speak a certain truth today. You've got your Mr. G, a flamboyant drama teacher whose dry wit, eccentric behaviour, and self-deprecating satire about the life of a teacher make you laugh and maybe even feel bad when you think about every teacher that you've had.
No, I'm always joking with the principal. I always say to Margaret, you've got yourself an entertainment industry professional for the price of a teacher, so where's my pay rise?
Then there's Jemay, the private schoolgirl snob who makes you think about all the upper-class people who probably didn't go to your school and who you thought probably didn't like you.
Beck was crying this morning because you called her a try-hard Asian.
It was a total joke. I can't believe you printed it out.
Like, you honestly don't know how upset we are, Jemay. Like, I don't ever want to be friends with you again. No way.
Guys, just learn what a sense of humour is, okay? It was a joke.
You called Caitlin a housing commission whore.
But I live in a townhouse, not housing commission.
Yeah, and you called me a clearasil before shop.
And of course, my favourite, Jonah, the bad boy class clown who made everyone laugh and who you could relate to as he constantly rebelled against the education system because he didn't give a crap.
What is it next to Leon? I'll learn more.
Over there now.
Fuck you, miss.
Beg your pardon?
I said fuck you with a P. Kids in the class don't even care because they're doing their work and they're concentrating and it's boring, and all of a sudden they get a joke and they just get a little break from their work and they get to laugh. So if that's being disruptive, then fuck you. That's not disruptive, that's entertainment.
Yes, each character is an exaggerated stereotype, and not everything that they say is obviously what happens in reality. But as Chris Lilly says, they feel close enough to being real, and it's the funny because it's true element that makes them so hilarious to watch.
I get really excited about trying to make the world as real as possible, and I feel like people will just connect more with it if it just feels like it's legitimate, and that's why I like the documentary format, because I place my characters within a real world and I cast people who are pretty much the real thing, and you get into a real environment. So Summer Heights High was shot in a real school with real kids, real teachers, and the principal was a real principal, and they have to play opposite these kind of ridiculous characters, and somehow you really connect with it, and people often end up crying.
Every line of their dialogue is not only incredibly hilarious, but also so quotable, and I often find myself still 13 years later being able to recite so many memorable quotes that have been stuck in my head.
Look at this, we're doing my tag on every motherfucker. Here's my dictation tag. Get it? See where it's coming from?
Hey, Jonah's one. It says, before I root you, are you over 16? Get it?
Or maybe I'll get pregnant. Maybe I'll just come root some teacher or something and get pregnant, and then you deal with that. You'll have to fucking raise the baby.
We weren't even bullying him, sir. We just punked him.
We were just playing
I said
around.
You got punked afterwards and he didn't even get it.
Other babies were crying and in a sort of monotonal way, but if I'd call out to mum rather than ma'am, like other kids, I would go, mum. Just because I'm rich doesn't mean I'm a bitch. There's so many fat chicks at this school.
So we could be racist to rangers.
But redheads aren't a race, Jonah.
But sir, there's heaps of them.
Coffee, before we teachy.
And look, 68, I owe you one.
Each character has their own unique set of moments, and I love that the show can balance the three of them so fluently, which is something that I think it needs for the show to work. Because just as one story feels like it's getting boring, it switches to another character and my attention is picked up again.
So, have you got problems?
Nice new friends, Jonah!
Shut the fuck up! They're not my friends, motherfucker! I have to do it as a program! They're homos! So, Pedophile Pete said that you've got social problems or some shit? The fat one, tell me first. You are down like this?
I needed a fairly big space to put on the show, and the hall wasn't big enough. So I booked out the gym till the end of term. Come in quietly, grab your balls, and leave. So I'm Viz Ed's least favourite person at the moment. Shut the door, please, David.
Which is also why I didn't want to watch his later works, because they focused just on one of these characters for the entire show, which feels like such a shame, when instead you could have 3 amazing characters with 3 stories going on between them and switching back and forth whenever you'd like.
So cool. Get over it, Jazz. It's going to be the best thing ever. Like, we should do awards at the formal and have like a hottest lesbian couple awards. And me and Tamsin can win it.
I got suspended! 3 days suspension! I had to go see Miss Murray, and she said that my dad had to pay for the lockers to be fixed and repainted and shit. Dad said fuck off to them.
What's interesting is that it came out in a time when the term political correctness wasn't even a thing, and I'm not even sure if people would be willing to risk funding any of his projects in the future, because he's obviously not afraid to overstep the mark with his comedy.
You know what was really weird and brilliant to watch, because now you feel like there's this creeping thing that you can never make a joke about Chinese people, or that you couldn't ever come in as a blue-eyed person to do a joke with Chinese people, and yet they loved it, and everyone loved it. But was it tricky to sell it?
Yeah, I had to go into the ABC and say, can I be a Chinese person who dresses up as an Aborigine? And so that wasn't easy.
It's going to be the ABC Charter, I reckon. They've got to get ticking every box.
Yeah,
We've had that before. They said that.
And what did they say? They must have been freaked out, were they?
They probably were a bit nervous, but they let me get away with it, so...
You need to have a degree of risk in order to make someone laugh, and Lily isn't afraid to risk making a fool of himself just because the joke might not work out.
Sometimes I think maybe I'm going to offend a certain type of person, like maybe the Pacific Islander community might be offended, or the Chinese community with Weekend Heroes, but they are often complimented and they like that they're being represented. I like overstepping the mark. I think my mark is somewhere different to everyone else's, and I think that's probably part of what's intriguing about the shows, is you're a little bit uncomfortable and like, I can't believe you just said that.
Not everything that Lily has done has made me laugh, and the risk of trying to make a joke about something taboo doesn't always work out.
Slap my heel, slap my balls, slap my...
But that doesn't mean his intention wasn't there to make you laugh in the first place.
Fuck you, car. Come and get me, car. Come on. See that fucking driver. Get a sense of humour, car. Fuck you. Don't you even know what fun is?
She's a naughty girl with a bad habit for drugs. She's a party girl with a bad habit for drugs.
My name is Jessica. Some kids call me a slut, and I've a dirty habit for ecstasy.